Hey everybody, welcome back to The Curious Musician. This week we have a message from Tyler, a trumpet player in Georgia who is preparing for his senior recital next year. He says, I guess the one thing I'm working the most on is patience and working up difficult passages with a lot of notes. I'm playing Hermann Bellstedt's Napoli on my senior recital, and it really does have a ton of notes. I've been working on Napoli for about the past month, and I wanted to give myself a ton of time to really get it in great shape. So Tyler touches on something really important. How do you actually go about preparing a new piece that contains a lot of dense, challenging technical passages? You don't want to dive in too quickly and risk building any bad habits that'll just take you even more time to overwrite later. What you do want is to make the uncomfortable comfortable. To gently, patiently, but efficiently train your ear and your technique to perform at the highest level every time. So in preparation for this episode, I pulled out Jean-Baptiste ARBAN's Fantasie Brillante, a theme and variations for solo cornet, like the Napoli. In the beginning, the piece introduces a simple melody that goes like this. What follows is a series of mutations of that original theme, each one more ornamented and flashy than the last one. Today let's look at ARBAN's final variation. If you look closely at the music, even with all these really fast notes going by, you can still see the skeleton of the original melody hiding underneath. And this is really important to remember no matter what you're practicing. You can always look for important notes like chord tones, downbeats, and other arrivals to reveal that melody's skeleton. And no matter how crazy things are getting out here, the whole time I'm going to be holding tight to that very simple melodic phrase. Now we've got hundreds of notes on this page, but if we take any one of them on their own and oh, that's not so bad. It's not the notes by themselves that are difficult so much as it is the spaces in between them that are, specifically how wide the intervals are and how quickly they happen. When I'm playing this variation at tempo, intervals like seconds, thirds, and fourths all of a sudden start to look a whole lot wider than they actually are. Kind of like how a pothole in the road is a lot more jarring to drive over at 90 miles per hour than at say 10. So I might check how I'm hearing these intervals by recording myself singing the passage at tempo. You don't have to sing in the piece's written key if your voice is in a different register, for example, and by no means does this need to be perfect. But for my purposes, I'm aiming to sing the intervals in particular as in tune as possible. Now, here's the brutally honest part. I'm using the Tonal Energy app, which allows me to change the playback speed of my recordings, but there are tons of other apps and devices out there which will all let you do the same thing. I take the recording of myself singing and I play it back at half speed, and I listen for any intervals that I sang either too wide or too narrow. No one ever has to hear this except for you, but for your benefit and perhaps for your entertainment, here is a recording that I made while preparing for this episode. So, lots to work on, which is good. There were a number of intervals in that recording where I either jumped down too low or didn't leap high enough. Moreover, I can hear that my triplets aren't always very even when I'm singing. They kind of sound like da-da-ga, da-da-ga, da-da-ga instead of da-da-ga, da-da-ga, da. All of this will translate over to the instrument, and so if I can fix it here, I'm going to have a much better chance of success on the trumpet. So after this, I would record myself again, but this time actually sing it at half speed. This time I want to make a special effort to overcorrect. Any intervals that I compressed the first time, I will try to sing wide, and any that I sang too wide, I'll try to bring closer together. I will also focus on making my rhythm as solid and mechanical as possible. Da 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 ga 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 da da ga. Then I'll try all these steps on the instrument. If I'm still having trouble on the instrument, I might add some fermatas to the notes on either side of the interval so that I can really hone in which notes I need to raise or lower. What all this does is train your ear to have a more precise sense of pitch, intervals, and rhythm, so that when you are playing at full speed, you'll be able to automatically adjust, and driving over those potholes won't be nearly as jarring in the performance. Another thing I like to do if I ever start to feel scatterbrained or lose focus while I'm practicing is play through a particularly difficult passage all on one pitch. For me, I find that if I play the opening phrase of this variation all on a written G, I can accomplish three things. I can make sure that my airstream is healthy and blowing straight down the middle of my horn. I can bring out the shape of the phrase I want to make without having to worry about the extra notes. And I can further solidify my rhythm at tempo without worrying about tricky intervals tripping up the steady motor of triplets that I want to create. And I know that if I'm having trouble with any of these things on just one pitch, I have to practice everything much, much slower before even trying to take things at tempo. So now that I've shared a couple of the ways that I like to practice tricky passages, I want to hear from you. Post a video, 1 to 2 minutes or shorter, of what you're working on in the practice room these days, and say a few words about what your goals are. For some examples of things you could share, boil down a melody to just its skeleton notes and play that version and the original back to back. Play a passage all on one pitch, and then play the original to show how one informs the other. If you want a challenge, sing the piece you're working on and then play it, and if you send that in as your video, you're awesome. If you've got your own way of practicing a tricky piece, please share that too. Or if you want to share something totally different that we didn't talk about today, please send that in as well. Would love to hear you. You can find the guidelines for all video submissions in the description of this video. Thank you all so much for watching and for staying curious, and I look forward to talking to you all soon.